do you ever think about heroes? I was just wondering if you guys ever think about like real life heroes, like the people in your life that are heroes. For example, I think, I'm not quite sure about this. Sorry, I just dropped my pen cap. I'm not quite sure about this, but I think my friend Amber has a brother that's a firefighter, and that's a hero. Like any of those first responder people, heroes, you know, a lot of police officers, heroes. My teacher friends are definitely heroes. Like, oh my gosh, moms, dads, those are the heroes. Okay. So I want you to just kind of keep that in mind. Like maybe you also have a hero that's your role model. Like, I don't know if it's, I'm trying to think of a celebrity that's a good role model. Okay. The Rock, Dwayne Johnson. You guys know how I feel about him. I think he's awesome. He's a comedian. He's I don't think he's a martial artist, but I do know that he was a wrestler. That's why he was like, his saying was, can you smell what the Rock is cooking? But he's like, you know, he's a role model, you know, he probably is a good husband and he's an actor and all these things. So like, those are the type of people that you kind of want to look up to. So why do I bring this up? Because we're going to start a unit on epic poetry. And if you see on the left, this picture is from the Odyssey. This is a particular monster Odysseus must encounter. And this is a myth, but there have been, okay, we all follow some sort of tradition, right? Whether you subscribe to American mythology, you know some of those people from history that kind of like make up our mythology. But you don't really know them. All you know is like what's written in the history book. And it's kind of the same thing as, you know, probably there was a great hero that traveled the Mediterranean and dealt with lots of like monstrous peoples. But this is what ends up being written down after all is said and done. These are the ideals that our culture embodies. Okay. So right here, I'll just start really basic, guys. This is the Acropolis, this mound here, and this is in Greece, which is 5,000 miles away. Right here is the Parthenon, and then here is the Erechtheion, and then here are some other various like remnants of temples to Lady Athena. And Athens, Greece is where this is located. I mentioned that. And if you ever get a chance to go, you have to go. You don't want to take a piece from this formation, though. You don't want to don't pick up any rocks, because our tour guide told us that like she had a student that did that. I don't know if this is really true, but I know that something like this did happen. And the kid, I don't know, took the piece of rock and put it in her backpack because it was just a special moment. Like, I completely understand why you would want to keep a tiny rock that you found on the bottom there. But as soon as she got to the bottom of the Acropolis and she was headed back to the tour bus, she was stopped by the Greek police. And just, you know, our hotel was so close to this, like we could see at all hours of the night, there are people patrolling this. But they arrested this girl. She was a high school girl. They said, we need that piece back. That is like, you just basically stole from the Smithsonian. This is our version of that. And so we need that piece back. And they made her parents fly there to Athens to come pick her up. And they said, don't you ever come back to Greece. So it's a big deal. And why would they have these fortifications? Well, these would like protect the Greeks in their city-states. So their mythology included these gods and goddesses. And Greece is the birthplace of our, you know, Western democracy. And people voted back then. I believe you had to be a man and you had to own land and stuff like that. But I mean, if you look at these people's mythologies, they treated women pretty well. I mean, some of their goddesses were women. Now, how did this place get called Athens? There was a myth that said that Lady Athena and also, was it Poseidon? I think it was Poseidon. Both of them wanted to be the patrons of this great city. So somehow they had a contest. You always want to lose against Athena, by the way. That's probably wise. Athena is the goddess of wisdom and war. And then Poseidon is the lord of the sea or whatever. Neptune also is his name. Athena, what's Athena's Roman name? Minerva, yes. All of us nerds know this. But they basically competed. So whoever could make something more useful would get to be like, the city would be named after the person. So it ended up being named Athens after Athena because she created the olive branch. And that was very helpful. Olive oil is a really nice thing to have. And olives are part of their diet there. And like people used to bathe in olive oil. They still do because it makes their skin nice and soft, especially if you have dry skin. But that was very helpful to the Athenians. So that's why the city's named after her. And just the fun fact, Poseidon, I think he created salt water, and the Athenians were like, what? How's that going to help us? I don't know. So, but the Greeks are amazing. So they invented so many things that we still use today. For example, the beginnings of a vacuum cleaner were made in ancient Greece. I don't know if you've ever been to the chiropractor, but they put these suction cups on you and it jolts your muscles. According to sources, there was an ancient Greek, well, he wasn't ancient. In ancient Greece, there was a man who figured out that if he would go out to the shore and he would step on some sort of electric fish, his muscles felt better, which sounds so insane, but it's the origin of the modern TENS unit. I know you're gonna be like, Miss Stevens, this is crazy, but no, it's true. I'm trying to think of some of the other inventions, you guys. I'm gonna be mad when I Google this because all of them are gonna come back to mind. Okay, so you can go to this museum, by the way, in Athens, and they have all of these really cool mechanical things that show you, but basically they invented voting too. They would have, everybody would get a rock and they would vote for a white rock or a black rock and they would vote. But this Antikythera is this mechanism that sailors, mariners could make out of nothing. And it basically like predicted where the planets and the stars were supposed to be at that time of year. And that's how they figured out how they were supposed to sail. They were geniuses. What else? Archimedes saw. I really don't know much about Archimedes and his crew. Let's see. I don't know. And there's apparently, I think this whole museum is like Archimedes' inventions. Oh, okay. This is how they got water. Wow. Okay, so yeah, they invented a lot of things, guys. A bra. I can't even believe they invented that. That's just crazy. Okay, so if you're thinking, why are we studying these people? Well, because they had codes of honor. They were the center of life for democracy for a very long time. So this is like our cradle of democracy. Like, of course, we're going to study them. And they believed in something greater than themselves. Before they had writing. Ooh, hold on. I want to pause this because I don't want to lose this recording. Okay, so before they had writing, this is basically just telling you they had songs that were sung about these great heroes, and probably they were most likely like teaching as well as entertaining, but they would teach you lessons in the story. It says that they were told orally, maybe sung, and then finally, many years later, would be written down. And three important elements of these epic plots are the Trojan War, the heroism of Odysseus, and the interference of the gods. So I kind of mentioned this in some future videos that I'm going to post, but the Iliad and the Odyssey are really important. They occurred sometime, they could have even occurred like 700 BCE, anywhere from 700 BCE to 1200 BCE, these stories that were sung. But you should know that historians believe that modern Troy is in Turkey. And there's a guy named Heinrich Schliemann. Oh gosh, I'm going to butcher his name because I don't know German. Schliemann. Heinrich Schliemann. Schliemann. Here's a picture of him. He was not a, there's really fun. Okay, so there's some really cool things about him on Netflix if you ever watch. He discovered like this mound basically that he believed was Troy. And it says it's, let's see. There's a show. I want to show like pictures of what he discovered. This is cool. Okay, so he claims that he discovered the Jewels of Helen. So he was actually looking for a real Troy. So if you're looking for authentic history here, he did dig into a pile that they think was Troy, and the city was destroyed by fire. There were lots of cities on top of the cities. Like, they're continually finding this stuff. Like, just the other day, they found remains. Well, it's now open to the public, I believe, but they found the remains of, he's one of the Caesars. Which one was he? What's the one? I gotta think about it. Sorry. Caligula. Okay, so just like a year ago, they found the remains of Caligula's, like his artwork, like his mosaics and his, like he had a menagerie. They found the bones of lions and other kinds of wild animals, like peacocks. And so all the time they're excavating and finding things. And even when we went to Greece and London, they don't like, okay, when you go to Greece, you can't flush the toilet. That's a fun fact. Okay, you can flush a toilet. You can't flush toilet paper down the toilet. Yikes, that would be really bad. You're supposed to throw your toilet paper away. And why? Because it clogs up the drains. And if they have to go in there and dig it out, then they could end up finding some sort of amazing archaeological discovery, and they have to stop whatever they're building and instead make that, that's burial ground. So they need to find all the artifacts. So you may buy a piece of land thinking, oh, this is great, but you don't want anyone digging there. So it would be highly illegal and wrong. So when you go to Greece, just a fun fact, do not flush your toilet paper, throw it away in the trash. I know. How much toilet paper did I flush there? Oh gosh. It's just an accident, it just happens. So why am I telling you about this? Because anytime they found something like that, like in the subway, they had treasures, because wherever they would find something, they had to put it on display. So it was so cool. So of course we're going to try to look for, there's myths, right? There's the myth of Noah's Ark, and maybe it's a true story too, but people have been looking for the Ark for years, right? And they're always going to try to find some sort of historical, actual, like accurate place that the Ark landed. They're looking for, is it possibly big enough to hold the animals? Did it follow the rules of the Bible? So, of course, people are going to be looking and asking me, was there a Troy? Yes, I believe there was a Troy. Do I believe a war was fought there over a woman? Oh, it may have had to do with probably like trade routes and everything, not just a woman. But I imagine they probably did have an agreement that somebody broke, and that really made them mad. So, okay, so I got off track there. Thanks for sticking with me. But in the myth, okay, guys, apparently this Trojan prince kidnapped the beautiful Helen from the king of Sparta. This doesn't tell you all the facts, but we know that Helen's suitors all made a pact. They said they would promise to protect Helen from any like sort of person who would try to rob her from her husband. And she ended up getting married to Menelaus, the king of Sparta, and then stolen away by Paris, prince of Troy. In the Iliad, this is going to be like 10 years of a fight between the Greeks and the Trojans. And Achilles is the great warrior of that. Now, is he a hero? I don't know. We'll have to see, because we'll probably, if we read anything about Achilles, I'm going to ask you, do you think he's a hero or a zero? But for English 9, we're actually just going to read the Odyssey. So that's the 10 years that Odysseus struggles to get back from war. Have you guys ever heard of the Trojan horse? The Trojan horse is this. So after fighting for 10 years, they got really tired and they cooked up this scheme. Maybe we could build this giant wooden horse and we can put it in front of the gates of Troy. When they open up to fight us in the morning, most of us Greeks can be hiding in our ships, but we can put the most powerful fighters in this giant wooden horse. And when the Trojans open the doors, they'll say, oh gosh, look, the Greeks went home, and they won't see the ships around the corner. And oh, they left us a gift. Let's drag this horse inside. So anytime someone says a Trojan horse, what that means is a gift that seems too good to be true, and usually it's harboring some maybe dark monsters. So I know there's a virus called a Trojan horse. It'd be like something that you click on, and you're like, oh yes, I want free weather updates every day, and it turns out to unleash inside of your computer this terrible virus. So that's what happened. The Greek soldiers were hiding inside the horse. Which is honestly probably not following the correct rules of war. Like, you're not supposed to spring out of a horse in the middle of the night and like murder all the Trojans and burn their city. I think that was probably crossing the lines of fair warfare. But I think after fighting for, 10 years, they probably wanted to go home, and they didn't want to go home losers. But in the Odyssey, Odysseus travels for 10 years to try to get home. No, for 7 years of that, he was held captive by a woman named Calypso. She was a sea nymph. She's kind of crazy. And the Odyssey is naughty, you guys. So it also opens up with double entendre. Do you remember double entendre from Romeo and Juliet? Like, the men were always talking about their powerful swords. Gross. This story begins with equal drama. Like, we're told that Odysseus is going to suffer terribly, lose all his men. They were children and fools. And they also told us, like, Odysseus spent 7 years with Calypso in her cave. Double entendre. If you don't know what double entendre is, you can Google it. What it basically means, like, you have layers of meaning, and as a grown person now, you probably know what that means, and I don't need to explain it to you. It also says he spent a year with Circe, an enchantress, in her cave. I'm not a pervert here, but I'm just telling you what it says. So Homer begins with that same drama, like that suspense of like, oh my gosh, he's going to suffer so badly. He doesn't even know it. Oh my gosh, we have that appeal of the double entendre being very spicy and us wanting to pay attention even more because of that. And he also calls on like Zeus's daughters to help him tell the story, the divine muses. And if you've ever seen Hercules, I believe the movie starts off with those muses singing in there. They're beautiful. But so the Iliad's the 10 years that they fight. The Odyssey is the 10 years Odysseus trying to get home to his wife and child. And we're going to read, depends on what class you're in, but we're going to read, in honors, we're going to read the Iliad and the Odyssey. But in English 9, we're just going to read the Odyssey. But we will talk Trojan War stuff, okay? Okay, so just so you guys said, it says adding another dimension to the human struggles reported in Homer's epics. We have these myths. There are these gods and goddesses are always fighting on Mount Olympus. That kind of explains like why we have weather. To the Greeks, it explains like, I don't know, why the crops would go bad, why the ocean winds were unfavorable. They would make up these stories about the gods, and maybe they did believe them too. And one fun thing they would do sometimes is they would travel to an oracle. And so a priest would have an oracle, and this oracle, I think their name was a Pythia, and they were named after pythons, like Apollo's sacred pythons. And basically these women were virginal women who were younger, and you would travel for miles and miles, and you would ask the oracle your future, because the Greeks believe very heavily in your destiny. And apparently there were these springs in the ground, and we actually went to Delphi. That's where one of the oracles lived. Several of them. There were several oracles, you guys. But in Delphi, it's in the mountains. It's so beautiful. They would breathe in these springs and breathe in this vapor and basically get high off of the vapors of the earth and then speak in tongues. And a priest would have to translate your fortune. So that's just kind of fun. And then, of course, they had Olympics. Why would you not want to follow the Greeks? They had Olympics. So Greeks were pretty cool. They did believe in these gods, but they also invented some other extra useful things that we use in our society, and we still do the Olympics. Okay, so that is just a summary of that. Oh, I love to read about Homer. Okay, Homer, homie, he or she, we think had red hair. No, not. Okay, Odysseus had red hair. We think that Homer was possibly a woman, and I think I covered this in one of my videos, but they believe Homer was definitely blind because there were symbols of blindness throughout the Odyssey and the Iliad, but also some scholars think that Homer was a woman because there's so much surrounding hospitality and the way that you're supposed to behave towards your guests as the owner of a home. And as you know, like you probably already know this because you're a Greek mythology nerd, but one of the goddesses' names is Hestia. And she was like, everyone says she's a boring god. No, she's actually not, because this goddess represented the comforts of home and hearth. And there is no place like home. In fact, Dorothy is kind of like Odysseus, by the way. She's just trying to get home. But if you don't have a home, you don't have a hearth, and you don't have anywhere to, like rest, that's a really big problem. So Hestia is an important goddess, and that may be why we think that Homer was a woman. Here they have a bust of Homer as a man, but I just don't believe 100% that Homer was a man. A lot of scholars think she was a woman, and she just had, she was visually impaired. That's fine if she is a man, though. That's cool. So, so of course, like she would sing these poems, and she was the best singer, of course. And then I'm hoping if we ever get back to school, we can watch "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou," which is a satire of the Odyssey. Okay, so just these are just some of the basic gods and goddesses, and this kind of like shows you, you know, where they show up in the Odyssey. But you guys probably know the three main gods: Zeus, ruler of the heavens. Then you got Poseidon, ruler of the sea, and then you have Hades, who's the ruler of the underworld. And he's not a bad guy. He is underworld. There's some good places in the underworld. Okay. Another version of the Odyssey is The Wizard of Oz. So many references to Greek culture are ingrained in our American culture. You go to any courthouse or Capitol building, it looks just like the Parthenon, okay? I got to pause this really fast because I have to attend a Google Meet, but I will be right back, and I will finish my thoughts about the epic hero. But even we have poems, we have vases, we have carvings. And I think if you go to Nashville, Tennessee, you can go see the Parthenon, and they've rebuilt it to what they think it looked like. Because we have like this white marble thing left over, but there's evidence that it was painted in cerulean blue and gold and had jewels, and the statue of Athena inside was golden. But it was used for so many more things. Like at one point in history, it was a mosque. At one point in history, it held like weapons and like grains and all these things. So all we have left is that formation. Okay, when I get right back, I'm going to tell you about the epic hero.